Scripture reading this morning comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, and you heard a preview of it. I'll be reading from, not a preview, you heard the whole reading, so now you have to hear it again. I'll be reading from the Common English Bible. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in the territory of Judea during the rule of King Herod, Magi came from the east to Jerusalem. They asked, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We've seen his star in the east, and we've come to honor him." When King Herod heard this, he was troubled, and everyone in Jerusalem was troubled with him. He gathered all the chief priests and legal experts and asked them where the Christ was to be born. They said, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what the prophet wrote. You, Bethlehem, land of Judah, by no means are you least among the rulers of Judah, because from you will come one who governs, who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and found out from them the time when the star had first appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search carefully for the child. When you found him, report to me so that I too may go and honor him." When they heard the king, they went, and look, the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with Mary, his mother. Falling to their knees, they honored him. Then they opened their treasure chests and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Because they were warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they went back to their own country by another route. Here ends the reading. Spirit of God, stir up your people. There is a post from X circulating around again. X is what Twitter is called now, but I feel weird calling it X. It feels like when we all had to start saying the artist formerly known as Prince. I have no idea who first wrote it, but it grabbed me a few weeks ago, and as I was preparing for the sermon, I realized this is why it grabbed me. The quote is this: "It's easy to spot a yellow car when you are always thinking of a yellow car. It's easy to spot an opportunity when you are always thinking of an opportunity. It's easy to spot reasons to be mad when you are always thinking of being mad. You become what you constantly think about. Watch yourself." It's kind of perfect, right? It's the same reason why when we buy a car, sometimes, at least I've had the experience where I've purchased a car and I had never thought about purchasing that car before, but once I own the car, I realize everybody's driving that car, and how did I miss this before? Or when I pick out an outfit, I realize, oh, there are other people wearing similar colors to me, right? What we happen to have in front of us, we notice out in the world. I'm going too fast. So much of what we notice, so much of what we are ready to believe starts with what we've already decided to be true in our lives. It starts with what we expect to see out in the world. So today is a day about turning our brains on to notice the things of God in our lives and to pay attention to the signs God may be putting right in front of us. Today's passage was about the wise men, the Magi. They are astrologers, astronomers. They are, the word here in Greek is actually magus, and everywhere else in the Old Testament and New Testament, it's translated as magician or seer or diviner of the truth. And so the Magi are those who spent their lives studying the stars or learning to interpret dreams and visions, seeking the divine will from these signs and wonders that they saw all around them. And so these Magi would have been familiar with what the heavens looked like at various times. They would have studied the stars in their position relative to other stars. They would have known when stars had appeared in the sky. And they used this information to help whoever they were working for, usually rulers of a particular nation, to decide what to do next or what was coming, what was happening in the world. Now, here's a little bit of a nerdy tangent for you, because there's always got to be at least one of those. There is a Jewish tradition that says Daniel, the prophet of Lion's Den fame, founded a suborder of magi in the Babylonian and Persian empires while the Jews were living in exile to watch for signs of the Messiah. Now imagine that. There's these wise men that Daniel is a part of, has been leaving. In Scripture, sometimes they're called the Chaldeans, and they've been gathered together to help the kings understand the signs and wonders about them. And while Daniel is in Persia and Babylon, he teaches them about the Old Testament predictions of the Messiah. This would have happened, if it's true, this would have happened approximately 150 years before Jesus was born. Nerdy tangent over, but hold on to it. So there is a chance that not only were these magi that we're talking about today learned in the ways of stars and visions and dreams and other signs and wonders in nature, but they were familiar with the messianic prophecies of the Old Testament. And they may have had some Jewish practices and beliefs mixed in with their own personal belief system. The Magi followed the star because they saw the star. The Magi followed the star because they understood what the star meant, and they were ready for it based on what had been passed down to them. Notice what else happens in this story. First, when the Magi come to Jerusalem, they assumed that the leadership of the Jewish nation would be just as excited about the news of the Messiah as they were. Can you imagine their little bit of surprise when the Jewish leadership instead panics when they tell them about the Messiah? Second, when the Magi see Jesus. Now pause for a second. Jesus is 2 or younger. That's how old Jesus is. So when we talk about the Magi worshiping Jesus, we're talking about a toddler, maybe running around the house. I mean, have any of you ever been around a 2-year-old? The terrible twos are a phrase for a reason. I wonder what a 2-year-old Messiah acts like. But somehow in this 2-year-old or 1-year-old or younger, they see the Messiah and they offer worship. And they offer worship that is full of symbols of who Jesus will be in the world. The gold is a traditional gift for royalty and for kingship. The frankincense is material used to offer prayers to the divine and is even commanded in the Old Testament to be burned constantly in the presence of God. Myrrh is used for embalming those who have died, but it is also used as an act of purifying those who have been consecrated for priesthood. So the Magi come offering signs of kingship, divinity, predicting Jesus' death, but also offering purification for the Messiah. Now, by the way, we don't know how many Magi showed up. We have no idea how many people are in this party. We say there's 3 because they brought 3 gifts, but there could have been a lot more than that. We have no clue. And lastly, notice they continued to obey the signs and wonders. Having seen the Messiah, they receive a dream. Do not go back to King Herod, but go home by another way. And they obeyed, which when you think about their role in the world, is a radical act of obedience. Their whole existence is about advising the rulers of nations. And they risk their lives going around this particular ruler in order to protect the Messiah. They know when God is speaking to them because they've been trained to look for when God is speaking to them. Now, there's a piece that's not in Scripture, but I imagine this had to have happened because somebody is funding this trip. They have benefactors that have been willing to pay for them to go on this trip, and whoever these mysterious benefactors were back in the East may have received a report about what the Magi experienced while they were in Jerusalem. We have seen the Messiah, and by the way, King Herod's not very excited about it. Today is about reminding us that we need a similar training. We need to set our expectations, or we need to put on a lens. We need to be ready to look for God in the world around us. We need to look for God within us, in the voice of our intuition and nudges that come from within. We need to be on the lookout for what God is doing or about to do in the world around us and how we are being called to respond. Now, all of these signs and wonders that we can receive, obviously we need to test them against Scripture and who the community says God is, and that's part of the reason why it's nice to gather together. We say to one another, I think God is saying this to me, and the community gathers around and says, we affirm that, or try again. Maybe listen some more and see what else is happening. One of the questions I get so much as a pastor is, how do I hear from God? How do I know God is speaking to me? Why won't God send me a sign? My response is, do we have our lens on expecting it? The Magi saw the star because they were looking at stars. Are we looking for the signs? Are we open to the way that God may be speaking to us? Are we ready for that moment where the signs we receive don't necessarily hold the answers we were hoping for? Are we ready to respond anyway? Today is about finding a personal star. Now, there are many ways that this has been done out in the world. People talk about setting an intention for the year. People have made bracelets stamped in little metal circles. That's your special word for the year. But it all begins with this practice called star words. Now, every time I say this, Teresa thinks I'm saying Star Wars. So you should anticipate in the future a sermon series based on Star Wars, because I feel like I owe her. She gets so excited about it. But this is star words. This is not a resolution. This is not something you're going to be tested on later. This is an invitation to be on a journey towards God and with God in the year to come. To look for opportunities within a specific practice and signs to grow as disciples. Now, I know last week, if you were here with us, we invited the Spirit to speak to us through the work of Lectio Divina. And this week, we're doing something slightly different, but kind of similar. Now, it's, pardon me, it may seem a little random to you because we don't always do this type of stuff in the Protestant church. But remember, if you look through the Old Testament, God speaks through the casting of lots. And actually, John Wesley believed that you could cast lots to tell what God was saying to you. This would be another thing that Magi did, by the way, the casting of lots. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pass around wood stars. And then we're going to say a prayer and ask God to speak to us. And then after we do that, we're going to pass around baskets with slips of paper that have words on them. And I challenge you to embrace whatever word you draw, even if it's not immediately obvious what it means to you. And to accept this word as God is going to teach me something through this, or God is calling me to live into this more fully, or God is going to provide opportunities for me to engage in this more frequently. Now let me tell you my word. I prayed this morning because I wanted to have a word ready for this point. So I grabbed a star. I did exactly what you're about to do. I grabbed a star and I prayed over it, and my daughter Maggie held the basket, and I drew my slip of paper, and I really wanted to change my word. Because I am kind of an introvert, right? If I took a test, I'd probably come out somewhere in the middle. But I like to nap, and I like my alone time when I can find it. Do you want to know what my word is? Fellowship. Yeah, fellowship. This is not a word I would have chosen for myself. But I am keeping this word. This is my word. I don't know yet what all it means. But if I call you to have coffee with me, will you please say yes? Because I'm supposed to be engaging in fellowship this year, and I need to figure out what it means. So if you pick up a word and you're like, ooh, stick with it. Pray over it. See what happens in the midst of it and allow this to be a time of discernment. We have just, through the wisdom of Aaliyah, figured out a way to invite you to your own Starward journey. So be looking for a post this week that'll allow you to participate in this discernment work too.